Welcome, everyone. Let me get my slideshow. Oh, actually should start screen sharing first. Here we go. Welcome. Today is March 14th, 2023. It's 7 p.m. Welcome to the Reservoir Hill Association General Membership Meeting. Welcome, neighbors, as always. Welcome, members. We're going to have our meeting as we usually do. We're going to start off with our board reports, and then we're going to move into discussion. We have just 2 discussions planned for today. We wanted to share with you the strategic plan that the board has put together for 2023. And we also have a presentation from one of our chairs about the Utah bike lanes. And then we'll end, as always, with announcements. And that's the moment where anyone can share things going on in the neighborhood or anything that you want to share that's upcoming that people should be aware of. So without further delay, let us begin. I'll start off with my report. I will talk at length later in the meeting about the Reservoir Hill Association strategic plan and hope that you all feel that it's in alignment with your goals and the goals of our members. I also want to share with you all that the BMP Tunnel Working Group has begun. We started meeting last month. And out of that meeting, we have decided that we're going to start a reading group. So that's for this month. We have been reading reports from Amtrak, and so that we are able to summarize them and make really clear what Amtrak is saying in those hundreds and hundreds of pages of reports, with the goal of then consolidating those into really easily read informationals that will go door to door via social media, just so that everyone, with the goal that everyone in the neighborhood has a better understanding of what's happening and how much this will affect our day-to-day lives. And the next meeting is this Saturday, and it's going to be held at Dorothy I. Height Elementary School in the community room, which is a really lovely space, at 11:30 a.m. If you want to join the BMP Tunnel Working Group, which is also a mailing list where we send out like any information about the BMP Tunnel, any like published articles, concerns, things that we've noticed, like, you know, people have noticed that drilling has already begun. The testing of the soil has already begun at Mount Royal Terrace, for example. So if you want to be in the know and also want to share information about the tunnel, which is one of the biggest projects that's going to be hitting the neighborhood in the next really couple years, please join our working group, and you can email them and email us at bpwg@reservoirhillassociation.org. And again, next meeting is this Saturday, 11:30 a.m. You don't need to know anything. You just need to show up so we can talk and strategize. Another thing that you might have seen, if you are eligible to become a member in good standing, which means that you've attended 50% of the last year's meetings. We are asking you all, especially, but everybody, to pay your membership dues. Being a member in good standing means that you not only have attended the last 50% of the last meetings, but you're also current in your membership fees. And so that will allow you to vote on things such as we're planning to vote on the Utah bike lane and the position that RHA is going to take on the Utah bike lane. And in order to be a voting member, you have to be in good standing. So we're really encouraging people not only to show up in these meetings, show up in your committee meetings, but also to be current in your dues. So if you have any questions, if you didn't receive that email and you're wondering why, feel free to email contact or board@reservoirhillassociation.org, and we'll figure out what happened, because a lot of folks actually log into this meeting without correcting their name. So you very well could be in good standing, but if your name says iPhone or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I can't tell that that's you. So just another reminder to change your name in the Zoom settings so I can see that you've attended the meeting. And that's all from the president. Moving on. Jerika.
Hi, good afternoon. I have nothing to report. There, the meeting for the West Avenue Corridor Business District Plan, they canceled the meeting today. So with that said, I have nothing to report.
Thank you. And I don't think they've met in quite a while, right? So there's not a lot of updates there. Thank you, Jerika.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
And on to Chet, our treasurer.
Hello, hello, everybody. Oops. Can you go back a slide? There we go. So the current bank balance is $2,082.55. We had membership income. Really, this is for this year, more so than just March, but it's $284.75 after the fees that PayPal takes out. Dues are $12 per year. So you can either scan that QR code and go pay your dues that way. You can go to our website in the upper right hand corner. There's a little donate button that will take you to the page to donate, or you can PayPal, send donations through PayPal at RHA Donate for us. I'm working on trying to get possibly get other forms of payment on there besides PayPal, but you can also pay with your credit card through the website link. You can also set up recurring annual donations if you want, so you don't have to think about it. You can just be a perpetual member if you'd like. And I have not yet filed the 990s for the organization. I will. It's on my list to do. I had some trouble getting logged into the site last time I tried, so that's about all I have.
Thank you, Chet. Moving forward, Brandy Savarese.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for my blank slide here. I do actually have a little bit to report from the Architecture and Historic Preservation Committee. We had our first meeting last week with fairly good attendance. I think we had, I don't know, over 15 people or so. It was a little bit of me talking, and we haven't ginned up a whole lot of engagement yet, but first meeting. And so I'm hopeful that our next meeting in April will be a little bit more engaged, and just some initiatives to recap what we're talking about on the committee, thinking about strategies to make the entire neighborhood a local historic district. So not limited exclusively to the Mount Royal Terrace Historic District and the Upper Utah-Madison Historic District. So that's sort of a long-term initiative. And then some short-term initiative is just collecting information from neighbors, reliable resources for work on our historic homes or our not historic homes, just reliable work, and trying to use the Architecture and Historic Preservation Committee as a resource for neighbors who are really looking to be engaged in taking care of their homes. So please be on the lookout for an announcement for next month's meeting, and I'll hope to see you there.
Thank you, Randy. It was a great first meeting, I have to say. It was wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Rolando Maxwell, Safety and Security.
Good evening. Don't have much to report. Just want to let you all know that the activities that we've been having on White Rock, the last time we had a great influx of individuals was on Friday, March 3rd. And that particular date, 911 call was made, and Officer Johnson came out, and he stated that he'd be making routine run around the neighborhood, even though this is not his district. Still waiting to hear from the sergeant in reference to having a community walk. So he promised to get back to me. So that's basically it. We haven't had much illegal activities at this side of the neighborhood lately. That's it.
Thank you, Rolando. And Police Officer Gillespie, did you want to share any statistics or anything that we should be aware of?
Yes, ma'am. The only thing I still see in the Reservoir Hill community as of right now that are still high are the auto thefts. So, like I said, if some people just, they leave their doors open or they just forget to set the alarm, stuff like that, try to look into some type of anti-theft device. I know that trying to, get a alarm system on a, aftermarket is expensive. You can always, go through the old way, get a club or something like that. I'm not sure how much they cost. I still have one. I bought that one back in '95 and I still have it. So, just have to do a little bit, a little bit extra. Also, the spring is coming, people gonna start leaving their windows open in their homes. Just make, if you're gonna, clean air out your house, just make sure you lock and secure the windows after you, at the end of the night to, help prevent a burglary and also, continue to keep your doors locked and your valuables in your car, just keep them out of sight so nobody can, get the temptation to try to break in your car and steal, little minor things, because something minor to you might be a treasure to someone else, like handicap placards or even a cell phone charger. Those things, people that's, down on their luck, they can sell them and get money for it. So, just keep mindful of those little, just those little things and everything will be okay. If y'all know any of the construction crews, if y'all have anybody of those attend your meeting, just make sure they lock up their valuables, because with the Carlton that's been doing the renovation over there, if they leave their tools on site, and if it's not secure, people will come and steal their tools, the copper piping out of the rehab homes, because that's a sign that once 5 o'clock hits, nobody's coming back until the next morning. So just be mindful of those little things, especially with the old Madison Park Apartments. Once that starts getting up in construction, they're going to have to be mindful also. They might want to set up cameras on that property, to keep a better eye on things. But other than that, that's all I have. And like I said, we continue to ride through the alleys of Reservoir Hill, because it's a lot of one-way streets, and continue to look out for the people who got displaced from the Western District, about with the CDS activity.
I'm sorry, can you explain that part, that last sentence you said, the CDS activity?
CDS, well, narcotics activity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like Reservoir Hill, there's a ton of one-way streets, and so we continue to hit the alleys, and to look out for the narcotics users or burglary suspects, because nobody really breaks into the front of the house. They break into the rear of the house because nobody sees you. It's out of sight, out of mind. So
Okay.
that's that's most well, some burglars, they'll look, say like if you have overgrown bushes and you have like a little baby window down there, some of the suspects can fit through that window, and they'll never be seen. So that's why I say keep your your property well manicured, so it can't be a hiding spot.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
No problem. And then if Mr. Maxwell would like for me to email him the numbers for February, I can also email him the
Wonderful.
statistics so he can see it also.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, and-
no more. So overall in the Reservoir Hill community, Part 1 crimes are down 52.4% from this time last year. So
Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, Rolando's email is safety@reservoirhillassociation.org, and he's the contact for the stats. I think Jerika used to be the contact, but now it's moved over to Rolando as he's taken over. So thank you so much. If you
Oh,
can
you're
send-
welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'll send it over right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Lauren Mohammed, Green Committee.
Okay, I'm back. I'm here. Hi. So, good evening, everybody. I'm Lauren Muhammad. I'm the chair of the Green Committee, Reservoir Hill Association. It's springtime. It's the thing time. It's the time to do the thing, y'all. So, Keandra and I talked about a lot of different projects coming up for the spring, but currently, to update everyone on the Reservoir Hill Association and Dorothy I. Heights relationship, we're still good, Keandra. So I emailed Isabel. She's very interested in us doing something for Earth Day together, and she's still interested in us partnering with Growing Green this spring with the kids at the school. We haven't met to break down how it's gonna look in terms of whether it's gonna be at the Dorothy Height location or Lenox Street Garden, but I did reserve the Lenox Street Garden slot. And Mr. Rolando Maxwell, you are being highly requested at Lenox Street. Joshua, Kate, Petty, and a few others have asked where you are. They're looking forward to seeing you again in the garden space there. So we have Lenox Street Community Garden still in action, potentially with the Dorothy Heights kids. We do have a continuing relationship with Dorothy I. Heights Elementary School kids, resuming again this spring. I'm also working with a new school in South Baltimore, Southwest Baltimore, the Southwest Charter School is what it's called. And they've asked that I help them start a garden there. And I told them that Reservoir Hill Community Association, we are community oriented and we're not limited to our own community. And they are interested in partnering with RHA in supporting their school growth project. And this is a charter school. It's a Baltimore City public school, but it's also a charter school, which means they get outside funding. So this is a great opportunity. I'm also, this has nothing to do with the Green Committee, but I'm also hosting a book club at that, a book fair at that same location. It's running now. If anyone has any old or used books, gently loved, we're sending them to Sierra Leone and Nigeria, West Africa. So RHA is reaching out farther than the local communities, guys. RHA is involved in international community love. So that's all I got for now, but keep your ears to the ground because we talking loud. Love y'all. Peace out.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. Janae McLean, Events Chair.
Hi, good evening. Just a few things that we've been working on for these 3 months in 2023. So at our last meeting, we talked about the wins of 2022. We talked about what we learned. We've sent out a few survey pulses to the community to get their input about what we did last year and what we learned. And we're using that information to plan out activities for 2023. And this year, we're going to take a leap forward and start trying to plan some things for 2024 as well. So we don't always feel like we're behind the 8 ball, which is challenging as we are an all volunteer organization. So the actions that we're going to be taking for 2023 include building out a few subcommittees. So for our subcommittees, we are going to be working on neighbors welcoming neighbors. And we have one of our neighbors, Heather, who's right down the street from me, who is going to be the point person for that subcommittee. And then we also have the garden and home tour. And so we sent out a few surveys to first understand the interest level and some of the parameters that we might need to work around. And so we are moving forward with that. If you are interested, there will be a way for you to reach out and contact events to share your interests so we can get the fall moving. We also want to engage in back to school activities that similar to what we did last year. We're going to be having at least one movie night and hoping for two. Some other things we have the potential of partnering and tabling at Live Baltimore. We talked about fish fries. We talked about Holiday on the Hill. So we have two events that are pretty short up, which is our Neighbors Welcoming Neighbors and our Garden and Home Tour. Join us on March 23rd to talk through what other things we want to do. So our meeting will start at 7 p.m. And then if you flip to the next slide. So again, we are underway with the Garden and Home Tour. I want to thank those that have provided input and also provided their recommendations and guidance and sage advice around ways that we can move things forward so that we can incorporate things that we picked up from last year's event, as well as pre-COVID events to bring things forward to 2023. So we need help. So we're recruiting different areas. If you would like to be a tour stop, please scan the QR code in the top right-hand corner. And if you have skills around app design, we need writers and editors. We will need ticket takers for the day of. We'll need people to help with setup. So again, we're underway and we're starting to plan things out. Please join us for our March 23rd meeting at 7 o'clock so that we can build this thing out and start showcasing our neighborhood. If you didn't get a chance to review everything that I'm talking, there's also a quick blurb in our newsletter that was developed by our marketing chair. So big thank you in advance for putting on our next Garden and Home Tour. So that is it for me. I'm going to turn it over to our president.
This is so exciting. The whole time you were talking, I was just thinking about how long this tradition has been going in the Reservoir Hill community. Do you know the first year that the Garden and Home Tour started?
I'll ask Chet. I know that I've been communicating back and forth with Paul, who was Paul and Glenda were the originators, but I'll ask Chet. And the tour is going to be the first weekend of June, the traditional date, June 3rd and 4th. But Chet, do you know?
I want to say almost 30 years. It's quite a long time. I'm not sure what the exact year was when it was started, but we've had almost 30 years of it.
And for anyone new to the neighborhood that might not have had the Garden and Home Tour experience, it's really a day to be in Reservoir Hill. People come from all over the city to come and visit in person in people's gardens, in people's homes, and really get a sense of the historic beauty of our neighborhood, which is, in my opinion, my very unbiased opinion, of course, one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Baltimore. And so it's really a wonderful time to really highlight our community, to build community amongst each other, but welcome new people into our neighborhood as well. I personally fell in love with the neighborhood through the Garden and Home Tour and decided to purchase here because of the beauty of the neighborhood, but also the beauty of the community and the people that came out to support it. So I'm so excited that we can do this safely and figure out how to do this in a really loving, wonderful way moving forward. So congratulations, Janae, for getting the ball rolling on this really exciting event and continuing the tradition. So I will continue on. Daryl.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daryl McLean. I am the chair of the Marketing and Communications Committee. Our committee hasn't met for a while, but we will be meeting Thursday, March 16th at 7 p.m. Hopefully I'll be in Baltimore at that time. We are looking for a few neighbors to join the committee. You don't have to have any background necessary. If you just want to see what we do, if you want to bring any skills to the table. You might learn something. You probably will teach something. And I also thought about the fact that for the creative types, they might not want to make the traditional meeting. So if you know anyone, or if you are interested and you're unable to make the recurring meeting, we can, through Google Groups, still work together and produce materials and learn things and teach things to each other. So that is the marketing and communications chair, kind of on his knees, saying, join this committee and or reach out to someone else that you know has something that they could bring to the table. Also, if you have any little ones that are probably about 13 and 14, they can teach me something, I'm sure. So so that is our pitch in keeping with our strategic priority 1A to increase. I don't know it by heart, but and our number one activity that we want to put to the forefront is the lobby in the lobby. It's going to be an informal hangout in the lobby of the residential towers to pass out flyers and to engage the residents around things that would be of interest to them, so that they would see how their membership and participation in RHA would benefit them. And as they start to see our presence in the lobby, we can start to engage them around the upcoming events, so that we can, according to our strategic priorities, get that increased participation in our committees, increasing our membership, increasing subcommittee persons, and to develop leadership that'll go into the subcommittees and hopefully eventuate into individuals that will eventually take our jobs. So the our meeting is in 2 days, Thursday, March 16th at 7 p.m. So y'all come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. On to Arlen Colors, our PDC chair.
Good evening, everyone. As always, I've said it before, it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole. I'm actually getting kind of frustrated with the process. But to add on to that, I have gotten some feedback. The last Friday, the gracious Melda called me and asked me what the hell was I doing on Madison Avenue because police were in the yard, in the backyard. I spoke with the neighbors there, and this does pertain to planning and development. And apparently someone had broken in on the third floor, and two of the third floor units, and the police were there. And the guy that was there told the police that his father used to own the property, and for some reason, the police let him go. Anyway, so this is pertaining to the actual management of their property. Been on 2 Zoom calls recently, Alice Kennedy and Ryan Dorsey. And the thing I noticed from the guest list, there are a lot of developers that have a lot of impact in this neighborhood or in those meetings. So that's something that we just have to really monitor and be aware of, because we're spending a lot of energy chasing after these issues as they pop up. In particular to the property where the police were. The previous owner his first name was Quinn. Just so happened I still had his number and I called him. He said, no, that wasn't my son. We live in Atlanta now. But he sold 17 properties in the neighborhood to that same group. And that group is an international group. One of the members who is over financing is on the board at Hopkins KC School of Business. I'm drafting a letter to them and to our representatives and put them on blast because they've had so many violations that now, according to the city inspector, now this is it. The first violations for trash, I thought they were like $100, $200. They're $50. Second violation is $100. Once they get 6 violations within a year, and this group is already there, then it goes up to $250, and they go into what he called a open notice. So once they get the open notice, they're inspected on a regular basis by the city. Now, if they clean up on a Monday, and then by Friday they put it back out there again, the city can't issue a citation until I think he said 10 days after the first one had cleared. So this is really convoluted. We're just chasing after our tails in this. So I think the best way to address a lot of these issues is just to go for mass embarrassment. And so I will be drafting that letter. I will send it to the board to have everyone take a look at it before we send that out. Again, according to trash, just in case you have this in your alleys, particularly behind apartment buildings, your property is responsible for the alley to the midway point of the alley, from your house to the midway point of the alley. So any trash or anything of that nature, any type of accumulations, you can report those. Okay, and just call 311. He said even if we can't issue a ticket within those 10 days, just file it, and just to make sure it's on record. So that's where I'm going to address those. That's where I'm going to stop right here. I know that Brandy has some information regarding the. I'm assuming she's next, so I'm going to stop there.
No, Brandy already went. Was there something specific to do with the Utah bike lane you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Yes, she'll follow up on that. Thanks, Arlen. And just for the group to know, we have invited Councilman Torrance to next month's meeting. Hopefully he can make it to discuss the legislation that he is sponsoring about, I guess, absentee landlords, and get a little bit more information about that and what that is addressing. So we haven't heard back yet from his office. I just invited him. So hopefully he will be on the docket. But sorry, Arlen. Yes.
I'm sorry. There was one other issue. 915 Chauncey Avenue. Does anyone know Alexander Salzberg? Okay, they have a BMZA hearing on the 21st regarding a 2-story rear addition. And I haven't heard anything from them. I guess we have to reach out to them, but we had said we wanted to avoid actually having to reach out, but I'll reach out to them and see what's going on with that. Okay.
Thank you, Arlen. Yeah.
Mhm.
So hopefully you'll hear a little bit more about our planning and our strategy, but Arlen has hit the nail on the head. We know that we need collaboration and support from our representatives, and that we are on the same page with them when it comes to really fighting for what's right for our neighborhood. And at this juncture, it feels like we're fighting both sides, right? We're not only having to advocate on behalf of our local, state, and federal governments, like advocate for the neighborhood, but we're also fighting larger powers that be that have really deep pockets. And it's unclear with our representatives what side they're really on, if they're able to have integrity and fight for the needs of our neighbors and our city, or if they kind of will just continue to let things slide until the entire city is kind of owned by these larger corporations and developers. So I guess that remains to be seen, but this year it's definitely a priority to figure out what side people are really on. So that leads us to our discussion on our 2023 strategic plan. So just a little background. Last year, we really saw the need for us to kind of think through, what does RHA do? Why do we do it? What are our priorities? but we never really got to doing the planning because we're always doing the thing, which I think anyone that's ever worked in a smaller organization or worked in a nonprofit can attest to. It's really difficult to nail down your strategic plan when there's so many urgent things always going on. As you just heard from Arlen and many of our chairs, it's constant. It's a never-ending flow of to-dos, volunteering for a community organization, and especially a small one that's attempting to make very big steps, very giant steps, right? So we got together for a few hours over, I think, a few weeks to really think through what does RHA do? What should we be focused on? What should we be centering in our work? So we wanted to share our thinking with you in hopes that next go round, we could make it a more inclusive process where all of our membership really contributes to this plan, but we thought it was really important that we start somewhere. So here we go. It's very simple. So the number one thing that we really want to focus on is increasing the people power of our community. So that means that we would like to collaborate with neighborhoods and leaders who have made long-term change so we can better understand the processes of the city and how they've moved to make that change. We want to improve our relationships with neighborhood organizations like Madison Park Community Association and all the community associations that border us. And we also want to make sure that every member of RHA and anyone that attends our membership meetings have an idea of how to do that, how to make change, how to make that long lasting, and will feel very comfortable stepping up into leadership positions in the organization. So we made that really clear that each committee is going to really take that on as a very important strategic goal for this year, is to tap the shoulders of people that have been showing up to meetings, that are coming, that speak up, so that they know that we're eyeing them for taking the lead in the organization as we transfer out of our positions, because an organization is only as strong as its membership. And so we really want to make it clear, although we're taking on the role of organizing committees and organizing meetings, we don't think the buck stops with us. We feel like we're only as strong as it's possible to continue on and make sure that leadership is passed on over the years. So if you're in if you're in a committee, if you're not, it's really wonderful for you to identify yourself if you're really curious about what it means to lead this organization or join as a board member, because we would like to, through this year, really show you what it's like, so that you could feel comfortable stepping up into that role in the coming years. The next thing that is kind of related to that is that we really think it's incredibly important that we increase our membership and participation by 25%. So right now, where we stand today in this meeting is we have around, I think, Melda, 25 eligible members in good standing. So that means that there are 25 people that consistently come to our meetings that show up to at least 50% of the last year's meetings, and we want to really increase that. We have overall really good retention for the people that do end up coming. They probably come 1 in 4 on average, 1 in 4 meetings rather than 1 in every 2 meetings. So we just want to get people to be more involved, get a sense of why people might not be able to attend the meetings. And maybe the answer is that some people are coming to the meetings, they just can't come at this time and they're watching the video later. So we just want to get a better sense of what's going on there. And again, we want to cultivate and build capacity. Sorry, so this is the second one. We want to cultivate and build capacity for organizational leadership, and we want to increase engagement and brand awareness with the Reservoir Hill community. I think because so many organizations sound similar to RHA, people don't really understand what RHA does and how it's different than other organizations. So we want everyone to know that RHA is the only east to west full neighborhood representational community association in Reservoir Hill. That's what we do. And so we want to make sure people know that, so they know the importance of participating in this organization and how that impacts our political power in this city. The other thing is, in order to do that work and do that work well, we need to increase our fiscal health. So one thing that we really are trying to do is make sure that we always have 3 times our operating costs in our coffers. So that's going to require some really serious membership driving, which people have already increased their paying their membership dues. So that's we already see a change there. And then we also know that we need to get better at applying and receiving grant money, because we can't be completely dependent on donations from our neighbors. I think it's important to have a good mix of income. And we know that we have the skills in our neighborhood for acquiring and applying for grants. And we need to strengthen our skills in doing that so we can be a more sustainable organization. So that's a very important goal for us, is increasing our fiscal health. And then we want to make sure that as we plan our succession planning, it means that we have to have really well documented procedures and processes, and that we have to keep a really good idea of where all our inventory is. It might be surprising, but we've acquired quite a bit of little things here and there. We have a popcorn maker, we have signs, we have tablecloths, we have all these things that we've purchased throughout the last year or so. And we want to make sure that we are keeping track of what we have, so we're not rebuying things, and we're aware of our resources. And then on another level, we want to make sure that all the members know what they have access to use if they were to want to help and support an event. So just making it more clear and more clarity around what we have, and then also what we do. Let me just, I just want to highlight something we talked a lot about, is we've set a deadline on our collaboration guide. So we've talked about this in a last meeting, but we've realized through our many partnerships in the last year or so that we need to have really clear language that we use with our partners, and make sure that everyone understands what we mean by partnership. And so we would like to create a guide for anyone that wants to partner with the organization to have a really clear understanding of what we mean by partnership and what we mean by collaboration, because that language can be used differently by different folks. And we want to make sure that we have a set of criteria so we understand and we have a mutual understanding with other organizations. And then this is a huge one, but it's definitely not last. It's last, but it's definitely not least of our 5 strategic goals. And one of them is completing a neighborhood vision plan by the end of our fiscal year, which is in December. As you know, we've been working with the Neighborhood Design Center to get that off and kicking. They're still waiting to hear back from the city about some grant money that they've applied for to help us out with doing that. So it would be extremely low fee for completing that neighborhood vision plan. I believe it's hovering around $500, and we can apply to other places to cover that, which is just basically administration fee. So just for folks that have never attended a meeting before, never heard about what a neighborhood vision plan is. This is a document, and you can see an example of one, because a similar charrette process was done for the building of Dorothy Height Elementary School, but we're looking for one that encompasses the entire neighborhood, and it gives the city an idea of what the neighbors actually want their neighborhood to look like. So in that process, you might say, hey, we really want to make sure that we retain the architectural integrity of our neighborhood, or we want to make sure that our neighborhood has protected bike lanes going north to south into the park. We want to open up more streets, or whatever the case might be. We have targeted areas around the school that we know we want to be slow streets. We want to reduce the speed limit in those areas. Those are the kind of things that you can kind of request through the city. The Department of Planning then accepts that plan, and they use that plan for all future planning. Well, right now we don't have one, and you can kind of see the chaos in our planning process. Like Arlen was mentioning earlier, it's the way that our neighborhood is operating right now. It's like the left hand isn't speaking to the right hand. So you have city agencies planning humongous multi-million-dollar projects, not understanding another humongous multi-million-dollar project is being planned right adjacent to the same thing. And it's really a shame that us as neighbors and volunteers have to tell the city what's going on and say, hey, did you know that there is another plan slotted for right there? And you might want to talk to that agency, because we don't want to be in perpetual construction in our neighborhood for the next 20 years. So those are the kind of things that we're hoping will be slowed down by a vision plan. We also we're in conversation with Councilman Torrance's office. He was talking about organizing a meeting with DOT, the Department of Planning, amongst other agencies, to really understand the next 15 years in the neighborhood and actually map it out and give us a timeline for all the projects that are being planned. We're still waiting for that meeting to be scheduled, but we will stay on top of it. I know Arlen is staying on top of it. He is being very insistent and consistent about that. So it's a goal that actually happens by the end of the year. So that's all for the vision plan. I can take a pause if anyone had any questions or concerns about that before we jump into the Utah bike lane discussion. I don't think I'm seeing anything. No comments, right? I can't see the comment box right now, so
No.
nothing. Okay, great. Okay, so I will pass it on to Brandy. I'm gonna actually stop my share because Brandy has a presentation on the Utah bike lane. Brandy, do you have access to the
Let me try.
Okay.
Still telling me disabled.
Okay. I'm gonna make you the host.
Oh, fancy. Okay, great. Let me share. And let me go to presentation view. And clear out my screen a little bit here. Great. So thanks so much, everybody, for coming tonight. I think the Utah Place Cycle Track is been a little bit of a sleeper issue in our neighborhood, but I do think it has started to gain some traction and some awareness. And I see some familiar faces from conversations about the cycle track. So those of you who are aware, I hope you'll forgive me retreading some ground in giving those who aren't entirely familiar with the project a little bit of background. So the Utah Place Cycle Track purpose and need. The cycle track provides a vital all ages abilities link to Baltimore's bike network. It provides users safe access to Druid Hill Park, the big jump across the Jones Falls Expressway, and then in the south to the Center Street cycle track. So not only is it bike infrastructure and connecting Reservoir Hill, north, south, and east and west, it's also connecting neighborhoods. So connecting Reservoir to Bolton Hill, to Madison Park, and to other neighborhoods to the south. So let's see, a little bit of background on the project. The corridor was identified as an important extension of the separated bike lane network in Baltimore in 2017. BCDOT received some money from MDOT to complete the design. That was in 2018. And my understanding, this predates my time in Baltimore, but my understanding is that BCDOT began some community outreach in 2021. COVID delays have slowed the implementation to some degree, but I think things have ramped up on BCDOT's side in recent months. RHA had a meeting, or I should say BCDOT presented this project to us in January. And I think we maybe weren't quite ready to receive the information yet. So at this moment, 2023, this is really important for neighborhoods to come out in support of the project, or to express their opinions about the project, whether it's support, neutrality, or opposition. Obviously, I'm hoping to convince all of you in attending that this is an advantage to our neighborhood and something we should be pursuing. But of course, that's up to you. So some useful definitions here before we start to look at some diagrams. And I promise this isn't going to be a super technical presentation, but I do think that there's some level setting that's worth doing here. So the first is the use of the term cycle track. A cycle track is a dedicated and protected section of the roadway that's intended for use by cyclists, mobility users, and scooters. The goal of a cycle track is to provide safe spaces for non-car users who are operating in a car-dominated landscape. Obviously, that has the added benefit of reducing vehicles on the road, reducing carbon emissions, all of those things that we know are very important for preserving our environment. So the idea of protected can mean a couple of different things depending on who you talk to. The boundaries of the facility, the bike facility, are demarcated by more than painted striping. So this may be the familiar flex sticks or popsicle sticks that we all know and love to hate in Baltimore City. It could be a curb, as you see here in this illustration, and it's often accompanied by striping. Striping does not necessarily denote a protected cycle track. Striping, as far as I think many people are concerned, is an insufficient solution, though it is something we will discuss a little bit later in the project, or a little bit later in the presentation. And then for the purposes of talking about parking, which parking is going to be a big topic of this presentation, I wanted to define head-in or back-in parking. So head-in parking, you can see that on the left of the screen, or I'm sorry, on the right of the screen here. Head-in parking is, you're driving on the street. We have this on Utah Place, and you sort of, hook an angled left to park your car with the front pointing to the curb. Back-in parking may be familiar to those of you who've parked on the avenue. I know some neighborhoods in East Baltimore have back-in angled parking. This is a Baltimore street. I think it's, I'll forget it. Anyway, this is back-in angled parking in a Baltimore neighborhood. So just for the purposes of, understanding the jargon, that's what we're going to talk about when we talk about head-in parking and back-in parking. Okay, so the Utah Place Cycle Track project is not limited to Reservoir Hill. Reservoir Hill section is considered section 3. The project begins at Druid Park Lake Drive. I hope you can see that. Let's go back. Begins at Druid Park Lake Drive and extends along Utah Place across North Avenue. It stretches down here through Bolton Hill and Madison Park, crosses MLK, and then MLK is down here, and then it terminates at the Center Street cycle track down in central Baltimore. So basically connecting to the Center Street cycle track to move east-west across the city in the south, and then at Druid Park Lake Drive to connect east and west, and then this is access over here to the big jump. So for our purposes tonight, we're going to be focusing on section 3, and you'll hear me talk about that. So let's see, moving on. The segment 3, section 3 in Reservoir Hill, I think it's important to point out some distinctions here in the project. So in our section, we have a one-way portion of Utah. You may know that Utah is bi-directional south of North Avenue with that beautiful divided median. But in our neighborhood, it is a one-way street. So it travels north up to Druid Park Lake Drive. So because of that, BCDOT has made the cycle track on Utah one way. So it is also for users traveling north. So it is a one-way cycle track. In order to accommodate southbound users, BCDOT has planned a mirror image of it on Madison Avenue. So we will talk a little bit about the Madison Avenue portion, but it's important to note that this is what is very distinctly different from the rest of the project south of North Avenue. By and large, the condition of Utah and Madison currently, so this is not what is proposed, this is the current configuration of lanes and facilities on Utah and Madison, is angled in parking on one side of the street, a travel lane, one travel lane for vehicles, a bike lane, and parallel parking. So overall, this is what we're dealing with, whether we're traveling north on Utah. In that case, you have the angled in parking on the west side of the street. You're having a travel lane with cars moving north, a bike lane here, and parallel parking. In Madison, it is the mirror image of that. So it's important to point out here, and this is where we're going to probably spend a little bit more of our time, is that the section at the north end of Utah and the section at the south end of Madison do not have this condition. The condition changes here. And so this is where I think residents of the neighborhood, users of Utah, would feel the most difference in the roadway. And this might be really where the questions are located. So I do think it's important to focus on those two sections and talk about the changes, and we can always circle back here and talk a little bit more about the rest of the roadway. So here's, again, just to go through this diagram, head-in angled parking. Head-in is the current condition on Utah and on Madison, the driving lane, the bike lane, and parallel parking along the curb. Okay, so I want to focus on these two sections in particular, one on Utah, one on Madison. So on Utah, we're really going to look at the section between Whitelock and Hendler Lane. So you're looking north in the images that I'll show you, but we're really going to be talking about this section of Utah, which is where the most significant changes are proposed in the BCDOT plan. So here's a visualization of the existing condition on Utah, looking north, roughly near Whitelock, but it's certainly north of Whitelock where this condition becomes evident. So what you have here is you have one parallel parking column. You have two driving lanes. So this is a driving lane here, and this is a driving lane here for vehicles. This is changed from one lane south of Whitelock. You have your bike lane that continues, and then again, you have parallel parking along your curb. At the risk of editorializing, I will share that when I am visiting friends on Upper Utah and who live north of Whitelock, I am absolutely shocked at how fast people drive through this section of the road. And I suspect what's happening is they've been stopped at the stoplight here at Whitelock. They've come off of one lane of road. They have two quote unquote open travel lanes, and they just accelerate incredibly. There's a lot of dangerous driving. I know there's also wrong way driving, but generally I have witnessed just an incredible change in driver behavior on this section of Upper Utah. And I have heard from neighbors that desire for traffic calming is very strong. So I want to illustrate that what is proposed by BCDOT, and this is what is proposed for the entire stretch of Utah, but it has the most distinct change here north of Whitelock, is angled parking on the west side, one driving lane, parallel parking for vehicles and a protected cycle track. So again, just to point out that what is parallel parking here and a travel lane will become the angled in parking on the west side of the street. This travel lane will be preserved, and then these two conditions switch. So the parallel parking comes over here, and you're parallel parking alongside the travel lane. And then the bicycle track, the cycle track, is protected here along the curb. And I'm just going to open the chat here and see if I can address any questions. If there's any questions, no, this will not take any parking. In fact, this is a net gain in parking on Utah and on Madison. Okay, cool. So I guess I'll take a breath. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody want to raise their hand? Anybody want to stop me? I don't think so. Okay, that's great. So I'm going to move to Madison Avenue now. Get back to my presentation. So Madison Avenue. So much like the situation on Utah, we have roughly a preservation of the existing conditions on Utah, except where it changes at Whitelock. And there's a pretty dramatic reconfiguring of the roadway north of Whitelock, between Whitelock and Hendler on Utah. We have a similar experience on Madison. So the Madison Avenue proposal, we'll walk through it, but it's roughly preserving the same configuration of the existing roadway, except when you get to Clendenin Street. And when you get to Clendenin, the condition changes between Clendenin and North Avenue. So here's the existing condition of this section of Madison Avenue. So south of Clendenin, North Avenue is right here. What we have is parallel parking on the east side of the road. We have an extremely long single driving lane. I can't really tell if this is an extension of the bike lane or not. And forgive me, I did not go take this photograph. So I can't quite tell if this is actually an extension of the biking lane.
It is an extension.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Chet. So you have parallel parking on the east side, a single driving lane, an extension of your bike lane, and then parallel parking along the curb on the west side. The proposed change, again, this is the proposed change for the whole stretch of Madison Avenue between Hendler and North Avenue, but it's significantly different here between Clendenin and Madison, is the introduction of angled parking on the east side of the road, a single driving lane, off curb parallel parking, and a protected cycle track. So your angled parking here, your drivers are pulling through, your parking is here, and cyclists, scooters, multimodal users, mobility scooter users, they're all using this protected bike lane. And I guess I'll make a point, since there was a question about parking. Anywhere we've made a switch from parallel parking to angled in parking is a net gain for parking. So what you can see is that we've introduced angled parking in one very long segment, quite honestly, of Utah, and a short segment of Madison. We've introduced angled in parking. And so there is overall a net gain of parking on both of these streets. And I think there's also the net gain of traffic calming, because when you have angled in parking and you have parking on another side of the roadway or the travel lane, cars are invariably going to move more slowly. And then I'll just offer some illustrations, proposed illustrations of what's going to happen at North Avenue. So at the intersections of Utah and at Madison. In both intersections will be painted these green skips. I guess they're skips because they're skipping, they're green paint and then skipping and then green paint. This is an example at Mount Royal and Maryland Avenue, which is part of the Mount Royal cycle track that some of you may be familiar with. So here's the layout of how those skips will be oriented on North Avenue at Utah. Excuse me. And then here's how the skips will be oriented at North Avenue and Madison. Okay, and then just a few final notes here. You know, I want to acknowledge that you know, everybody loves to hate the popsicle sticks, the flex sticks. I'm one of those people. I think they're just, you know, they're very ugly. They're very hard to maintain. They are often in disrepair. They don't really fit the character of our historic neighborhoods. And you know, you may argue that they detract from our historic neighborhoods. But what I think is really important when we're talking about installing bike facilities or installing traffic calming, curb bulb outs, whatever that might be, that the use of flex sticks or popsicle sticks is an important first step in what is really a long view. And I think it's really important that we as neighbors, RHA, whatever neighborhood, really take the long view here and redefine the space now, whether it's with striping or flex sticks or whatever, so that in the future, we can then install curbs or bollards, beautiful planters. You know, these serve the sort of same purpose as the curbs or the bollards. I thought these were really, really pretty terrific. So I think that, you know, as much, we might want to swallow our distaste with the flex sticks if that is what's being offered, and accept that as a first step, because I think the second and third and fourth steps are just so much more powerful and so much more important. And then finally, I want to share something that I don't have really like formal information about, but I think it's part of the project and worth talking about. I talked to BCDOT today, and I asked, you know, I was very kind of interested in what happens at the intersection of Druitt Park Lake Drive and Utah and Madison. I didn't quite get as far as Druitt Park Lake Drive. I wonder if actually maybe they don't even really know yet. But I did get some information that BCDOT is planning traffic calming at the intersections of Utah and Brooks and Utah and Hendler Lane, which will likely be painted bulb outs, perhaps some popsicle sticks. Again, planting a flag here that popsicle sticks are a step in the right direction, and that, you know, maybe we write a grant and we get planters that we use here as curbs rather than popsicle sticks. So, but I do think that overall, this is a part of BCDOT's plan for Utah and for, you know, nearing the intersection at Druitt Park Lake Drive and improving the conditions up there. And so that's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer the questions that I can and engage in the discussion.
If the city's made a decision on Druitt Park.
Does anybody want to ask a question, or should I just go through the chat?
I think you can go ahead and just go through the chat.
Okay.
Randy, and if everyone, I think Kathy Epple, I can hear speaking. If you don't mind muting, I can't mute because I'm no longer the host of the meeting, but you might want to mute anyone that is unmuted right now.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to do that. Okay, great. So I will, I'll go through the chat. How will the protected bike lane impact street cleaning? I guess I think what you're asking is how will the streets be cleaned with the protected bike lane? I don't know how DPW does that, but I know they do it. They take care of the Mount Royal cycle track and the Center Street cycle track. So I wouldn't anticipate that the installation of a protected cycle track is going to create a problem for street cleaning. I'll also invite neighbors, you know, if you see trash in the cycle track, you could pick it up. I mean, that's what I do on my street. I wouldn't say the street cleaners actually do a very good job. So I would just say, you know, maybe it's all of our responsibilities to sort of keep the cycle track clear, our streets clear, our sidewalks clear. More parking supports increased density for landlords. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Kathy. And you know, I wouldn't necessarily say you're wrong. You know, this project is an interesting exercise for a neighborhood, right? This from BCDOT's perspective, this is to install a cycle track and to protect multimodal users of the roadway. I have heard from neighbors that what neighbors really care about is traffic calming and parking. So, you know, in this case, we're kind of getting both. And, you know, it's not just landlords who want additional parking, it's people who live in the neighborhood. So I guess it's just kind of pick your poison here. And that's what I'll say about the more parking. Adversely impact snow removal. I really, I guess I'll just say, I don't think that's a reason to not install bicycle facilities. I'm pretty certain that the city can navigate snow removal on the roadway facilities. Two-way traffic. We're not installing two-way traffic on Utah. I think that's kind of a non-starter. I agree that a two-way street is a more active street, but these are residential streets, and I just don't even think that's on offer. And I understand that you feel concerned about cyclists on the road. And I think I respect that and I acknowledge that. And I would hope that the separated facilities would allow cyclists to be more kind to other users. I also think that it's going to help you not get run over by a car. Druid Park Lake Drive, Druid Lake Avenue did not come up in my discussion. And Omar says Madison Park. He's a Madison Park resident and he thinks it's great. I appreciate that. Some of the kids will be biking from the Utah Marshburn School to Dorothy Height. That's awesome. Bike lanes are safer than cars on the roads. Absolutely. Kathy's opposed to the plan. Mike and Kate Phillips are also opposed. That's our comments.
Okay, so maybe we can open it up to people that are live here and can speak to their opinions on the bike lane. A lot of the negative remarks was really from one or two people that are in the meeting. So yep. We have around 29 people here. So I would love to get a better sense of how people on the call feel in a more democratic way. So if you would just raise your hand and share your opinion on the bike lane, and then ultimately we're going to be taking, just so everyone knows, those who are eligible to vote in RHA have been emailed. Those are our members in good standing who consistently come to our meetings according to our bylaws, which is coming to 50% of the scheduled meetings in the past year. If you feel like you should be eligible but did not receive an email, you can email the board at reservoirhillassociation.org. So without delay, I'll, Omar, your hand is up. Oh, Omar, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Keandra, you can take the screen back if you'd like.
I will, yes. Okay, looks like Omar is connecting to the audio here. Can you hear us, Omar?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. So I'll be up front. I'm not a Reservoir Hill resident. My name's Omar Hamza, and I live on Madison Ave in Madison Park. So right across the street from, or right across from North Ave. And I just wanted to come in and say, you know, at least on our side of the street, we think for the most part, the general idea of the Utah bike lane is a good one. You know, for those of us that live here, we do see kind of the issues with Utah as it is right now. It's really treated as a racetrack in a lot of ways, especially as folks try to beat some of the lights. And in terms of the impact, it seems to be, based on what DOT has told us, seems to be somewhat minimal in terms of parking and traffic. So I personally, I use every form of transportation. I bike, I drive, I take the bus. And I think this will be, something that's very great for the neighborhood. It'll bring a lot of value and, make the street safer for all of us, especially a lot of my neighbors use motorized scooters, and they're brave enough to take those out on the streets alongside some of these cars. So I'm hoping that we can at least put something in for some of those folks, as well as some of the kids that bike and use the scooters around the town. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do see a comment in the chat from Carrie Moore. Spiro and I oppose this too. Welcome, Carrie. Welcome to the RHA. Thank you for coming tonight. I hope to see you again at more meetings. Kara, hi, I live on Upper Utah and could not be more excited for this change. I both drive and bike in the city, and I'm both happy to have more parking and thrilled about safer and better bike lane. Thank you, Kara, welcome. Kathy again. So RHA membership counts, but not residents on Utah, Madison, or property ownership. I have been in the neighborhood for 40 years and I have been active in the community. I believe I should have a vote. Kathy, just like I know that you're very heavily involved in RAT, you have very specific procedures and bylaws for your organization. We do too. And we wrote them together as a neighborhood. And we have rules governing how we vote in our organization. So yes, we're applying our bylaws for this particular vote because it's about a position that our organization is taking. On top of that though, Kathy, we are also polling our neighbors to find out what they think, and what we found overall, and UMENA has done as well, is that people really are really excited about this bike lane. But it's good to hear about how you feel personally, but I would ask that you allow other neighbors to speak up because we have to hear from everyone. RHA is a democratically run organization. We have very clear rules on how you can participate, and we just hope that you can respect that. Thank you. Again, how many meetings do you have to attend in the last year if you attended the last 6 meetings? So since March of 2022, if you came to even 6 meetings, you would be eligible, but unfortunately, I do not believe you did. So I think you came to maybe 2. Okay, so moving on, does anyone have any other comments about the bike lane?
Yes, my hand was up, which you probably didn't see it.
No, I didn't see it, Arlen.
No problem. Regarding the residents on Utah and Madison, for the last 2 to 3 months at the Upper Utah Madison Neighborhood Association meetings, this topic has been presented with design schematics directly from the city. And the overall reaction from the residents of Upper Utah Place and Madison Avenue have been positive in response to this. So as far as the democratic process is concerned, this is another element, RHA encompassing the full breadth of the neighborhood, along with the issue that has already been raised at Upper Utah Madison Neighborhood Association meetings, should cover us as far as the democratic process is concerned.
Thank you. Yeah, we try our best to make sure that we outreach to all of our neighbors and get a sense of how people feel. As a resident, I mean, I think on our board, we have multiple residents of Utah. I live on Utah, Janae lives on Utah, Daryl does as well. Arlen lives on Madison, Melda lives on Utah, and so does Rolando. So we live where the most affected, we're the most affected neighbors. So we're not coming here making a decision as board members, but I just want you to know that we also live in the neighborhood, obviously, but specifically on Utah and Madison. So but we still want to hear from other members. We're not making a unilateral decision. This is a decision following our bylaws, following the input. And so if there are specific things that you are super concerned about with this bike lane, it sounds like parking, Kathy, is a major concern for you. I would say though, that whether or not this bike lane is installed, there are conversions going on in our neighborhood. There's gonna be more people seeking parking in our neighborhood. The bike lane going in or not, is not gonna change that. But as Brandy said, the bike lane actually can increase the amount of parking available so that it can actually help with what's going to happen anyways, even though RHA is working really hard to try to maintain as many single family homes as we can, because we do feel like we don't want it to be a completely owned by landlords that are trying to obtain multiple buildings. We do encourage there to be density if people can have ownership. We're very much interested in exploring alternatives to density, like co-ops being formed in buildings rather than corporate landlords occupying all those buildings. But at the same time, this is a process. We do live in a city, right? We don't live in the suburbs, and this is part of the process of living in the city. Kathy, you can have a minute, but honestly, you've taken up a lot of the time of the meeting, but go ahead.
Hi, this is Mike Phillips, it's not Kathy. So Kathy and I have lived here since the early 80s. She's been on Madison, I've been on Utah. She switched it over to Utah. And I appreciate the association's idea that this should dovetail into other city projects. But when we asked the question about, is it, you just kind of glossed over that. So do you have a sense of where the Druid Park Drive DOT plan is in its, and you guys are all young, that's great, but my wife's in her mid 60s and Kathy's in her 70s, and we have a hard time sometimes with like backing in, parking, looking over your shoulder, the idea of the cars being right next to the car lane now, and as you close off more of the street and narrow the lanes, and for the, I really appreciate biking because I biked for almost a decade, but the idea that the 20 people who ride the bike lanes up to Druid Park Drive should have more say in this than those of us who live here is kind of silly. And the idea that you would exclude people because they're not association members, even though they live on the street, is even less democratic. While you can, and one of the biggest arguments the neighborhood used to kind of slow down the rapid increase in density was the parking and other city services that get stressed by the idea of having more and more people packed into a smaller and smaller area. So while we all appreciate, being able to park in front of our houses, there is a penalty. And when we have to move for street cleaning and the dense part of the street has to move to the less dense part of the street, you can't just ignore that and say, yeah, well, you can find parking because everybody else has. You're changing the situation. So I'm not hearing anything that smacks of kind of rational decision-making. You seem to have made up your mind, and now you're just looking for people to agree with you. And I don't like that kind of approach of not being included. So that's my say on this for the moment. And I'll write you a little note that says similar kind of things. Because, the trash in the alleys and all the rest of that, it's all about density. It's all about how many apartments you're packing into an area.
Okay, so I would like to respond to your comments. So first and foremost, I want to make it very clear, anyone in the neighborhood can come to an RHA meeting, just as you have tonight. You're welcome to come.
My wife's got very serious health issues. We don't go out into the public very often because if I come home sick and she gets it, that's pretty much the end of her. So the idea that, you can go to meetings and blah, 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 that's not really what this is about. This is about changing the environment for the neighborhood.
Okay, but I'm speaking. I gave you a chance to speak. I'm responding to what you've said, okay? And we have to keep this cordial, right? So I heard what you said. I heard that you said that you can attend meetings. And I want to make it clear that our meetings are online. You don't have to go anywhere. Just as you have attended tonight, you can attend any Tuesday of any month and come to an RHA meeting. That makes you eligible to be a voting member, just as you have attended tonight. So if that's an issue, we can explore that and amend our bylaws so that we can also include you. If you watch a video of our recording, we've been very flexible about how to become a member. So we are not exclusionary. So I have to stop that. I'm sorry, I'm gonna mute you.
God.
Because you're taking up too much of the meeting time. You're saying that you're not allowed to voice your opinion, but you're actually stopping others from voicing their opinion because you're repeating the same things over and over. We've heard what you've said. The density of the neighborhood won't be solved by the bike lane. That's a separate issue, and we welcome you to be a part of the solution around that issue. People are working daily to kind of solve that issue, and we would love for your participation in being active on that issue. And if you're not able to at least write in, show up to BMZA meetings and the other things that we do to act around that issue, okay? So we invite you to actually address that issue in a way that's effective. The other thing that I'd like to say is that the streets will have more density on one side and not the other. That is true, but there are other lanes on the streets that you can park on to move your car. And we also, as homeowners, have the ability to build a garage in our backyards to park, right? Street parking is not the only way that homeowners can park. And maybe that's something that you'll want to consider as we move forward and as the density of the neighborhood shifts, okay? And the other part is that we're really hoping to slow down traffic with these bike lanes. We're really thinking about different ways that people won't feel like they're being run over by crossing the street, which all of us who live on Madison and Utah have experienced, right? So the bike lanes are a measure to slow down traffic, not increase traffic on the street. And so this vote, the way we're proceeding in voting is following our bylaws. And I'm sorry that you don't respect our bylaws, but we set them as an organization, we set them together and we set them democratically. And there was a time and place to change them. And you can vote or move or email us to amend our bylaws, but the bylaws are as they are today, okay? And if you would like to change them, that is something that you can go about doing when you become a member of the organization and attend our meetings. Okay, so I will move forward. I see a hand up, Rolando Maxwell.
I just want to say is that I see the advantage of having this bike lane. And it's not only bike lane, it's for people that walk, people that handicap. Our sidewalk in this neighborhood is actually horrible, okay? So it would be a safe place for us to walk, not worrying about tripping on our sidewalk. Unfortunately, the city having serviced the trees, having serviced our sidewalk, and the density problem that you're talking about, we already have it. Okay, right now, you can find parking in Utah or Madison if you come here after 6 o'clock. Sometimes you can't even find it after 4. Okay, so we already have a density problem. Reservoir Hill is at least, in the last census, not the recent one, was over 70 to 75% multifamily. We have right next to us 5 units with no off-street, with all street parking throughout the entire neighborhood, roughly from Ducatel to White Lock. There's only 14 homeowners. So we already have a problem of parking, okay? So this thing of density and creating an issue of parking already exists. Right now, the way it's presented, the angled parking give us more parking. The ability of you find a parking space in front of your home. It may come a little more challenging now for you to back in than driving in. But think of the safety of now, when you coming out, you're able to see the cars in. Now the cars in should be moving a lot slower than they're moving today. Sometimes I get out and I have to stop by and look to see these cars and just zoom by me going 35, 40 miles an hour. And even try over on the other side of Utah, where the street open up, they're going over 50 miles an hour. You can't even think of crossing safely. You have to wait for the vehicle to pass by, hoping that there's an opening. And we can't have the bumpers because it's used as an emergency service. We already tried that. So this is the only choice we have right now. This is the safest choice because I feel it for the people sometimes that I see in wheelchairs who have to take the main street to go from one area to a supermarket or store, and they are in the street. And when a car is coming, they have to find a way to get in between two cars to allow this car to pass. This at least gives them the opportunity to go down the street safely and don't worry about a car hitting them. Okay, at least I would like to walk in the middle of the bike lane where I don't have to be worried about tripping on the sidewalk. Okay, I'm about your same age too. And I'd be tripping every time on the sidewalk, bumps in my toe, my foot with these sidewalks. These sidewalks are really out of control in our neighborhood. And this not only in Utah, you can walk down any street in Reservoir Hill and you have the same problem. So if this can help at least a minute amount of people that can use these streets safely, it is a plus. Let's deal with the inconvenience of having to backing in at our old age, looking over his shoulder, but like anything else, practice become perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolando. And I just want to address some comments that were made in the chat. Kathy says, you said there are only 25 voting members in all of Reservoir Hill. And John says, it seems like 25 people are making decisions for the neighborhood. Charles Chet responded saying, when RHA writes letters of support, they are letters of support from the organization, not the neighborhood at large. That's the whole point of our bylaws. So saying that we're making decisions for the neighborhood is false. And I want to reiterate, Kathy, I know you. I know that you understand that because none of us can attend a RAP meeting and force you to write a letter based on our choices and our decisions. You have to be a member of your board. So you know how that works. I don't know why you're creating these false dichotomies right now, but it's not appropriate. And we're trying to be as open and honest and clear with how we're discussing this. And that's what we're doing tonight. Brandy, you're next.
Thanks, Kendra. Yeah, I just want to, I kind of want to make just 2 points. First of all, I think that the net gain of parking that Reservoir Hill will see as a result of this project is not something that's going to attract a developer. I mean, I don't know the number, but we're not going to gain that many more parking spots. It's not like we're raising buildings and creating surface parking that's going to facilitate hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new cars parking in our neighborhood. And I share the gentleman's concern about, I think it's, I frame it slightly different. I guess I'll say I share RHA's concern about landlords who are not engaged in the neighborhood, who are subdividing homes in ways that may not align with the neighborhood's goals. And I think there are a number of opportunities at this very moment to get involved with bills in council that address the concerns of zoning, of density, and it's an opportunity for all of our neighbors. I implore you to observe these bills, to become educated, and to express your support or your opposition, whatever it is, to our councilmen, because this is a moment where Baltimore is starting to pay attention to density issues and density concerns and zoning concerns. And we all have an opportunity to engage and share our opinions. So I would like to echo what Keandra said. The bike lane is not going to create such a horrible parking problem or transportation problem or development problem for our neighborhood. It's a net gain really for all neighborhood users. And I think it's important that we frame it that way.
And thank you, Brandy, for bringing up legislation that our councilman is sponsoring to address a lot of the issues to do with that. And I know Councilman Torrance, that you're on the call tonight. If you wanted to share any kind of insight about that, or any what you might know about the relationship between bike lanes and density and parking, or if you have anything to add to the conversation.
So I'm going to be transparent with you. You all need the density for a supermarket. I'm just going to be transparent, right? Because in terms of access to supermarkets and other amenities, the density is important. So for a number of us who don't want to travel other places to find food, and this is an opportunity to close the food desert, density is important, right? The question is, how do we reasonably do density and respectfully do density? That is a broader conversation that we're having at the council level. It's one of the things that I'm working out with Councilman Dorsey, because I'm opposed to the Abundant Housing Act right now until we have other measures in place to make sure that we do it in an equitable way. Because in other neighborhoods where the prices are cheaper, in Black neighborhoods, they can put other, I'll put it like this. I've seen halfway houses, I've seen homes and other things that people did not originally want in their neighborhood that was affordable because of discriminatory policies right now. In terms of, we're talking about the appraisal gap in Black neighborhoods, the assessment gaps. We're talking about the devaluation of property. So, and I'm mindful that Reservoir Hill right now is a 90% Black neighborhood. So we have to do this in the right way, in a way that preserves and makes sure residents who are currently living there can stay there, right? But we also have two things. We have an affordability gap in the neighborhood. I saw online that somebody was renting a basement for $1,600. So the density, and this is one of the things we're having. Like right now, I'm holding the affordable housing units in Reservoir Hill accountable because they are allowing people to live in squalor, rats, mold, and other things, right? So we have to hold them accountable. Then we have Madison Park North coming to right size the market in Reservoir Hill because they're offering market rate rental properties, which will make the housing properties that we currently have with renters in it, bring down those prices and right size the market, right? So we have to think about this from the larger perspective. There's going to be additions of density. That's why DOT is working with my office to have a broader meeting to discuss all the improvements we have to make in taking apart and taking into two things, right? There are about 20 different things that DOT is taking considerations in terms of your traffic pattern. In next school year, you will have young people coming to Dorothy I. Height from Utah Marshburn. They will have to cross Utah Place, North Avenue to go to a brand new school they never went to. You have young people from Penn North who are commuting across River Park Lake Drive, Druid Hill Avenue, as well as McCullough, and other streets to access Dorothy R. Height, right? That's just two issues, right? In addition to that, we're trying to do traffic calming on Linden Avenue, Utah Place, and Madison. In addition to that, we have the traffic that's coming off of Druid Park Lake Drive at high speeds and around it at high speeds. We have Bramble's new project that is coming in Madison Park North, which we will have an update for you guys sooner than later at the end of the month that we will advertise, because you're gonna have model homes soon, right? So you got to understand what that construction looks like. How does that impact that? Then you have the Amtrak construction that's going to take place as well, because they're going to have to demolish properties in the neighborhood. So there's going to be a lot of disruption that's happening. And I just want to say that DOT is doing their best. One of the things that we did, because we recognized that some neighbors did not want to change behavior and do back-end parking, which is safer. DOT considered maintaining the hidden parking because we recognize that people are creatures of habit, but there might be an opportunity where we have to put the protected lane inside the parking for the bike lane, which is safer, add concrete, but it still allows people to slow down, right? So we're making reasonable accommodations because we recognize it. There are some of your neighbors who are requesting angle parking on the other streets in Reservoir Hill right now. because they recognize they need additional parking because parking is a premium. So it's going to take a well balance of us all being transparent, understanding what that looks like, and being transparent. Right now, we're considering changing the statute where instead of one dwelling having one trash can, if you have a multi-family dwelling, you're responsible for having multiple trash cans because there are landlords who don't provide the trash cans in Reservoir Hill. So we've been fining them, but it's going to take more than just a fine. So I just want to say that this broadly, I get the tensions that there are in terms of change, but there has to be things that you have to think about your neighbors, your property value, whether it be your physical home or your car or your physical body, because that is your property. Your body is your property. And you have to think about what does your safety look like in terms of it. We have to slow some vehicles down. I'm often in your neighborhood. Keandra sees me all the time with my young baby and my family. So we understand like people, and I'm gonna say this online, people drive like a bat out of hell if they get above Whitelock. And that is dangerous going into Druid Park Lake Drive because they don't stop. So there has to be some changes that makes the neighborhood safer for you. And ultimately that's going to attract more residents. Hopefully that was helpful to give you the broader context of the complexity of everything that's happening in your neighborhood.
Yes, thank you, Councilman. That was very helpful. And I just want to remind everyone, or maybe let everyone know, maybe this is the first time you've ever heard this, but Reservoir Hill used to be regarded as the gateway to Druid Park, right? And so biking into our neighborhood and into Druid Park should be something that is not frightening and isn't something that feels like it's disconnected or that it's something that is a very difficult endeavor. And I would love to see the day where people think of our neighborhood as a pathway into a really beautiful green space, right? So if we can wrap our heads around that of our neighborhood being a passageway for the city to enter Druid Park, enjoy the amenities of our park, of our zoo, of our lake, and us feeling really comfortable taking our own bikes out and riding through the park as a natural part of being a resident of Reservoir Hill and as a natural connection to the city and to the park area. I think that over time we've been disconnected from our parks as being really an extension of our neighborhood, but hopefully over time we'll be reconnected to that cultural and historical legacy of this neighborhood really being a park-centered neighborhood. Arlen, your hand is up.
I believe Daryl's hand was up before mine.
Oh, okay, I don't see it, but yes, Daryl. Thank you, Arlen.
Thank you, Arlen. I just want to say in regard to a small number of people making decisions, I'd like to give you another view, if I may. We had an issue in our neighborhood of an historic property that the city had made requests for proposals, and three companies or three organizations put in proposals. One was for a women's shelter. One was for a homeless youth shelter, and one was for a food court. So in order for us to at that point, which that's the midway point of what was happening with this property, at that point, this organization did everything that we could to get to poll the neighbors to see what the neighbors wanted for 2001 Park Avenue, including producing a 59-second video that went out across social media that took the three presentations that the individuals did, separated it from the entire YouTube video, and then made those presentations available so individuals could quickly understand the three proposals. We also did flyers. We covered it in multiple meetings. We covered it in other neighboring organizations. We did everything we possibly could. when there was a glitch in the matrix online, we ensured that voting was held open so that neighbors could continue to vote, to ensure that they had the opportunity to voice their opinion on what that which of the three proposals that they preferred. Now, that's just one example of what this organization does in its effort to poll the neighbors and to do what's in the best interest of the neighborhood. If you look at the strategic plan, my portion of the strategic plan, or my presentation today, I talked about my number one project, Lobby in the Lobby. That is us going into the residential towers and talking to Reservoir Hill residents that are often overlooked or that we are unable to reach. So now we are putting our thinking cap on and finding how we can reach every resident in the neighborhood, including non-resident homeowners. So what we do is we try to, try is the wrong word. What we do is we poll the neighborhood. What we do is we have conversation after conversation, because understand, we also find out about what is happening in the neighborhood and polling the neighbors when we have dumpster days, when we have community cleanup, when we have events where, like movie night, where we put a QR code on the welcome table so that we're trying to get more information from the residents. So I just wanted to give an alternate viewpoint insofar as, this organization is an all volunteer organization that never misses a zoning meeting for properties in our neighborhood. Between Arlen and Rolando, they are doing this every single day, as some of us are, while we are, as a volunteer group of individuals, so that more halfway houses don't just pop up next door and you're unaware, as happened to us on Utah, and all of a sudden a different door comes in and then you see 8-12 people coming in and out of a van out of nowhere. So that is a different viewpoint as to what this organization does. And I am marketing at reservoirhillassociation.org, and I would be happy to continue this conversation with anyone who would like to, in person or online, so that I could further extol what this organization does and why we need you to help us do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Very heartfelt, thank you. Arlen.
Yeah, I haven't been in the neighborhood for 40 years, but I've been here for 27 years. And I've seen what empty homes and result in along Utah Place below White Lock. Most of those buildings did not have roofs when I moved here, didn't have sidewalls when I moved here. And from the day one that I moved here, I got involved in the neighborhood. I was a renter. So this is not against renters, okay? One of my favorite neighbors, and I have a lot of favorite neighbors here in Madison, is a young man who is actually renting now. He's looking to buy a property. But the issue becomes when developers come in and they want to skirt by the zoning laws because it's a vacant property and they want to, quote unquote, help the neighborhood, okay? And so if we oppose things that will actually increase the flow of families and owner residents and also support our good renters in the area, we will go back to what we had back in 1997 and before then. Councilman Torrance has been more than supportive of supporting the wishes of the neighborhood concerning zoning. We recently on Madison had a building that wanted to be zoned as 7. And those developers swore up and down that they hadn't even started inside the building. One day they left the door open, we went in there, they put in HVAC, new walls, and everything. They hadn't done it. They didn't know how the contractor did it because they didn't authorize it. I want to find that contractor who works for free and supplies free material for me too. So this is not about 1 or 2 neighbors. This is about the neighborhood as a whole. I'm looking forward to actually seeing this neighborhood becoming what its potential has been for the past, I'm sure, 40 years, which is why a lot of people moved in here 40 years ago. It's been a climb, and it's been the efforts of every individual that comes in and participates and contributes. I've invited Brandy to address the same issues tomorrow at Upper Utah Madison's Neighborhoods Association meeting. Again, this would probably be the 4th time we've addressed it. And again, we've had more support. I can't think of a single negative response to what's been going on in a meeting. So I welcome anyone to come out and voice in. And I welcome anyone to continue, as Daryl said, participation in the organization, in the community, and in our homes.
Thank you, Arlen. So I just want to reiterate that Arlen welcomes folks to the Upper Utah Madison Neighborhood Association, folks that live on Utah and Madison, to attend that meeting, to get another presentation, be able to voice their opinions. And so that should be very much in response to the concern that, folks that aren't most affected by this change would be voting on this issue. So we will also await to hear Arlen from the vote that goes on there, or the conversation that goes on there, to get a better sense of how people are feeling on the issue. And I do believe we're nearing, yes, and for attendance purposes, please, anyone, thank you, Chet, anyone that does not have their first and last name in as their sign-in name, that's how we take attendance. I reached out to quite a few people that didn't have their full name and asked them to change it so that we can make sure that we have the proper attendance to the meeting. So please update that there. And now, if there's nothing further to talk about the bike lane, I think that this was a very heated conversation. We didn't expect it to be such a debated conversation, because honestly, whenever we had past conversations, people have been extremely excited and supportive of the bike lane. So this just raises the flag that this is more contentious than we thought it would be. I think we'll go back to the board and see how we would like to proceed. Would we like to proceed more along the lines of the way that we usually deal with it, which is in the PDC, the Planning and Development Committee often proceeds through a system of documentation via, sorry, it's such a simple word and I'm losing it. Petition. A simple petition where we can go door to door and get people to sign as to whether they oppose or support it, since it's more contentious than we expected in this call. Or we might just move forward with our membership vote so that we can have, because right now the DOT needs to get a sense of how neighbors feel about the bike lane, and because there's a possibility that they could lose the remaining funding that could be applied to this. And so that's why we have put it so high on our agenda. So I will talk to the board and see what their thoughts are. Kylis Winborn says, where are model homes planned? I think that was, and Councilman Torrance, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was referencing Madison Park North, where they'll be building new homes. So there will be some model homes going up soon.
Yeah, that'll be a part of an update. We're trying to schedule time with the developers so that we can be clear with the community about construction time, so that you do know that generally between 7 and 7 is the only time you're supposed to see construction in the neighborhood, so that you're aware, because building new homes is going to be a disruption. I'm just going to be real with you. In addition to that, I will say two things. DOT will not lose funding on this project. I just want to be clear. We have spent that money. We're not losing funding. I just want to make sure we're clear that this project is funded. We will not lose money. The state funds that we needed for planning were completed.
Oh,
Just
okay. So there's no risk of losing the state funds, local funds, federal
No,
funds?
it's just people will be upset that we wasted time.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. So that was our urgency there with writing a letter of support. So again, I'll go back to the board and see how they're feeling about it, how we should proceed, so that we feel really comfortable in writing our letter. So I will end the meeting, just announcing our, reiterating that we have a a BNP tunnel working group meeting that's happening this Saturday. If you can, we would really love for you to attend. It's happening at Dorothy I. Height Elementary School. If I can somehow get the, there we go. The chat up. I can go ahead and put if you're on Nextdoor, you can look at the information there and sign up and say that you're going. If you're not able to attend, but you're just interested, you can do that too. And it has information about how you can sign up for the working group. And then I know that we have quite a few committee meetings that are happening in the next couple of weeks. And I usually have a thing I can cheat on and like read all of them. My brain is like a sieve, so I don't remember things. I have to see it right in front of my face, and I don't have it right now. Daryl's meeting is happening on Thursday, 7 p.m. Is that correct, Daryl?
It is. Also, Upper Utah Madison Neighborhood Association meets tomorrow, the 15th at 7. Marketing committee my committee is the 16th at 7. Events meets on the 23rd. And planning and development meets on the 27th. And hey, and architecture and historic preservation, I am saying is the first.
I think we're going to change the date, Daryl. So I think it's going to be the first Wednesday of the month.
First Wednesday.
But TBD.
Okay. All righty. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. And thanks again, Councilman Torrance, for coming. I said earlier that we invited you to present on your legislation that you've sponsored and are supporting, and the things that we should look out for. I hope you can make it next month to present on that. We also have invited folks from the Harlem Park co-op. They're going to be explaining to us how they went about organizing a food co-op in their neighborhood, and opportunities to join their food co-op if you're interested, but also just telling us a little bit about how they've organized that. So they'll be here next month. And St. Francis, do you have any things to share with the group? Any upcoming events?
I have a lot, but I want to respect everyone's time.
Okay. So you can go on the St. Francis website and sign up for their newsletter. It's super informative about all their events. Is there anything happening this week that people should know about?
Not this week, but on Wednesday, March 29th, we'll have a community stoop night that everyone is welcome to come. It is free. There'll be free food. There'll be music. There'll be yard games, giant Jenga, cornhole, an imagination PlayStation, a fire pit with s'mores. There'll be a school supply giveaway. Just come out. That would probably be the most immediate thing, but I can email everything else to Janae to add to your guys' next. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, but I would really encourage, it took me a long time to realize that they have a newsletter. You want to sign up for that. Councilman Torrance also has a newsletter that you'll definitely want to sign up for. And Daryl does an amazing job of trying to synthesize all the things from different newsletters, but those are the ways that you can be informed about the things happening in your neighborhood. Thanks again for staying the whole time. We lost quite a few people, but you stuck around. So thank you. Have a great night, and the meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful week.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
night.
Thank you, everyone.